Hey, have you ever found yourself wrestling with your own thoughts? That inner voice you try to silence, but somehow it always finds a way to shout even louder? As Nietzsche once said, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Fascinating, right? The truth is, the more we suppress our darker impulses, the stronger they grow in our subconscious. Jung referred to this as the shadow, that part of ourselves we hide not just from others, but most importantly, from ourselves. Today, let's dive into that inner abyss and discover how to turn your shadow from an enemy into a powerful ally. The nature of the inner shadow. The shadow, as Carl Jung conceptualized it, represents the repository of everything we deny about ourselves. These are the impulses, desires, and thoughts we deem unacceptable or shameful. This part of our psyche doesn't simply vanish because we ignore it. On the contrary, the more we deny its existence, the more autonomy it gains in our unconscious. Think of the shadow as that overstuffed closet you avoid opening. The longer you leave it, the more chaotic and intimidating it becomes. Over time, the door barely holds back what's inside, and things start spilling out at the most inconvenient moments. The illusion of moral perfection. Our modern society is obsessed with the appearance of spotless virtue. On social media, we present sanitized versions of ourselves while internally carrying the weight of our rejected aspects. Nietzsche harshly criticized this slave morality, the tendency to deny our full nature in favor of an unattainable ideal. I'm reminded of Sarah, a high-powered executive I met at a personal development workshop. Outwardly, she was the perfect image of success and composure. Yet she suffered from devastating panic attacks when alone, the result of years spent suppressing her vulnerability and emotional need for connection in the name of maintaining a perfect professional image. The cost of repression. When we repress thoughts or emotions deemed negative, they don't disappear. They simply change form. Unexpressed anger can morph into depression. Unacknowledged fear manifests as chronic anxiety. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater in a pool. The harder you push to keep it submerged, the more energy you expend, and inevitably, when you get distracted or tired, the ball bursts to the surface with even greater force, often hitting you in the face when you least expect it. Projection as a defense mechanism. One of the most fascinating phenomena in psychology is how we project our shadow onto others. What we refuse to accept in ourselves, we identify and criticize fiercely in others. As Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Think about that coworker who drives you crazy because they always want attention. Could that reflect your own repressed desire to be noticed and valued? Or that person you judge for being too aggressive? Could it be that you're denying your own necessary assertiveness? Ancient wisdom on integration. The ancient Greeks understood something our modern culture has forgotten: the concept of sophrosyne, the excellence of character and mental balance that comes from complete self-knowledge. Aristotle didn't advocate for the elimination of negative emotions, but rather the pursuit of balance. It's like a well-tended garden. You don't eliminate certain plants because they're bad. You understand the nature of each one and find its proper place in the ecosystem. Courage, for example, isn't the absence of fear, but the perfect balance between cowardice and recklessness. The shadow is a source of creativity. Many of history's greatest artists and thinkers have channeled aspects of their shadow into extraordinary creations. Consider Steve Jobs, whose obsession with control and perfectionism, traits that caused constant conflict in his personal life, were the same qualities that drove Apple to create revolutionary products. Or Frida Kahlo, who transformed her physical and emotional pain into works of art that continue to resonate deeply with us. Creativity often emerges precisely from those parts of us that are less tamed and conventional. The first step, recognition without judgment. Reconciliation with your shadow begins with a radical act of honesty. Observe your unacceptable thoughts with curiosity, not condemnation. It's like being a scientist studying a natural phenomenon. You don't judge a volcano for erupting. You observe the process with fascination and respect. When a surge of anger, envy, or any other emotion you typically suppress arises, simply note its presence. Interesting, I'm feeling envy right now. What might this teach me about my desires and values? Questions for deep reflection. Pause for a moment and consider. What emotion do you find absolutely unacceptable to feel? Anger? Envy? Resentment? Lust? Now, when was the last time you overreacted to someone? What might that exaggerated reaction reveal about parts of yourself you're trying to hide? If you could have a conversation with your shadow, what questions would you ask? And more importantly, what wisdom might that side offer that your conscious personality desperately needs? The technique of inner dialogue. A powerful tool for working with the shadow is establishing a conscious dialogue with these rejected aspects. Take Michael, a university professor who attended my shadow work workshop. He struggled with chronic procrastination that threatened his career. Instead of continuing to berate himself, I suggested he talk to his procrastination. By personifying it and dialoguing with it through writing, he discovered it was actually a form of protection against his fear of failure, a fear rooted in childhood experiences. This insight allowed him to approach the issue with compassion rather than self-criticism, completely transforming his relationship with his work. Transforming repressed energy into purpose. The psychic energy contained in the shadow is neutral. It can be destructive when repressed or constructive when consciously channeled. Imagine shadow energy as water. When dammed and blocked, it can cause devastating floods. When properly channeled, it can generate electricity, irrigate fields, and sustain life. Aggression can transform into healthy assertiveness. The desire for power can manifest as positive leadership. Vanity can turn into genuine self-care. The shadow in relationships. Our closest relationships often serve as mirrors for our shadow. Jessica, a coaching client, was in her third failed marriage to emotionally unavailable men. Through our work, she realized she was projecting her own emotionally distant side, developed as a childhood defense mechanism, onto the partner she chose. By recognizing and embracing her own difficulty with emotional vulnerability, she not only transformed her relationship with herself, but finally attracted and maintained deeper, more authentic connections. Acceptance versus action, clarifying a common misunderstanding. Many people resist shadow work, fearing that accepting their negative impulses means acting on them without restraint. Nothing could be further from the truth. Accepting that you have impulses of anger doesn't mean you should go around lashing out at people. It's like recognizing that you're hungry. You don't need to devour everything in sight. You simply acknowledge the feeling and consciously decide how to respond to it. Paradoxically, it's when we deny these impulses that they're most likely to erupt uncontrollably. Awareness brings choice. Inner alchemy, a metaphor for transformation. Medieval alchemists spoke of a process that began with dark matter, negredo, moved through a stage of purification, albedo, and culminated in the creation of philosophical gold, rubedo. Think of this as the process of renovating an old house. First, you confront the mess and decay, facing the shadow. Then comes the cleaning and sorting of what's worth preserving, integration. Finally, you rebuild something new and more valuable with the authentic materials, transformation. This process doesn't happen all at once. It's more like renovating one room at a time over the course of a lifetime. The collective and cultural shadow societies, like individuals, project their shadows. Consider how easily we demonize entire groups that represent qualities we collectively deny. Tom, an environmental activist, realized during a retreat that his intense hatred for oil executives masked his own repressed guilt over his privileged, fossil fuel-dependent lifestyle. By acknowledging his shadow, he shifted from antagonism to constructive dialogue, becoming surprisingly more effective at creating real change. When we stop seeing the enemy as entirely external, we gain the power to foster authentic transformation. The ongoing path of integration. Integrating the shadow isn't a final destination, but a continuous journey. It's like learning to dance with a partner who initially seemed threatening. At first, the steps are awkward, and you step on each other's rhythms, but with practice and patience, you develop a fluid and harmonious choreography. Emma, a middle-aged artist, described her shadow integration journey as finally finding the treasure hidden in my dark basement. The deeper I go with the flashlight of awareness, the more resources I discover that I never knew I had. True freedom doesn't come from escaping our full nature, but from embracing it with wisdom and compassion. So did this dive into the depths of the human psyche stir something within you? If this content resonated with your personal journey, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might be fighting that silent internal battle. Smash that like button. It helps this video reach more people. And if you're not already part of our community, hit that subscribe button right now. Your comments are incredibly valuable. Tell me, what aspect of your shadow are you learning to embrace? Is there a specific technique from this video that you're planning to try? Remember, your engagement isn't just a number. It fuels our community and helps shape future content. See you in the next deep dive.